Hey guys, it's Albert. You know what time it is. It's time to call Saul because we are in Season 2, Episode 1 of Better Call Saul. I'm doing the recap of this series. There are very few television things that I feel like are must-watch TV. And for me, it's weird. But this is one of them. The break-off series from the incredible smash hit Breaking Bad, which to this day may be my favorite TV series of all time. Better Call Saul was super strong in its first season, and I'm really excited to be talking about the second season and seeing where it's going, seeing where this character is going, because that is really what this is all about. And so, yeah, let's dive right in to episode 1 of season 2 of Better Call Saul. And we start off in this episode kind of where we started off at the beginning of season 1, right? Where we have this old black and white flashback to Saul in Nebraska, in the Cinnabon in Nebraska, sort of living out his life in hiding after the events of Breaking Bad. He has the mustache, he has the really much more thinning hair, and he has, I mean, this isn't just black and white for the sake of black and white. We can see that all of the joy has been sucked out of Saul Goodman / Jimmy McGill's life. Just this, the way it's shot with, again, with the black and white, but also just, it looks so dreary. It looks like this dystopian thing, like THX 1180 or whatever that, you know, this oppressive kind of, it's the real world, but it's heightened. It's this heightened sense that there's nothing left for Saul Goodman, and there's no room in the world left for Saul Goodman, so all we have left is the shell of Jimmy McGill, and even Jimmy McGill had it better than whatever Saul has turned into now. We see him at his boring day job, doing his thing, dumping out the coffee in the trash, taking the garbage, and he goes into this room with the dumpster, and he's in the room there with the dumpster, and there's it's one of those doors that latches from the wrong side, you know, and of course he wedges it open, but it closes, and he's stuck in this room, and he goes up. There's two doors. There's the one door that he can't open because it's, you know, it's the latch from the wrong side, and there's another door that's a fire exit, and it has a sign on it that says, "Don't open this door. The alarm will sound. The police will be called." You know, these, everybody, I assume, has seen these doors from time to time in different places. It's not supposed to be a normal exit. And he looks at it, and you could see him. He reaches for that handle, and you just see the life go out of him, where he's just not even willing to step that far over the boundary and take that much of a risk. Even when he's clearly, he would be fully in the right to open the door and get out on his own. But no, he goes and he bangs on the other door. He waits. He sits there, and eventually the janitorial staff does come in. You almost get the sense that this has happened to him before, because when the door slams, he's like, great, fine, this has happened again. He has a little crate there that he can sit on to wait for. The janitorial staff comes in, and you've seen him before. He picked up the screw off the ground, and he leaves. You know, they open the door for him. And it does this really slow pan in towards the wall as the janitors bring in the trash over from his little trash pusher cart thing. It pans closer in on the wall and closer on the wall, and we see that he has scratched on the wall in the tiniest of letters, amongst all this other giant graffiti that's written on there with magic marker and stuff, in really bold letters. He has in this tiny little print just written, "SG was here." And that is really, I think, the perfect encapsulation for where Saul Goodman is going, because there's just the tiniest remainder of Saul Goodman left, but he's almost all gone, and he's just been beaten down by what happens to him in Breaking Bad. And so, knowing that that's where we're going, knowing that that is the ultimate end of Saul Goodman, we then flash back to our main storyline that takes place before Breaking Bad, and we get this look at the Jimmy McGill that is turning into Saul Goodman, who we saw at the end of the last season, right? He had his moment of, screw this, screw everything that's happening. I don't care anymore. I've tried to do the right thing over and over and over again, and the universe keeps screwing me over for doing the right thing. Well, forget it. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm leaving this. And he goes off and he's humming Smoke on the Water, thinking about his friend that died. He has the pinky ring there that represents, his sort of old connections and going back to being Slippin' Jimmy. So we go back to that, but they put a little twist on it. They do a little something different, because in the previous end of the season, we saw him get out of his car, kind of walk a little bit and stop and think, and then you cut to him at the checkout gate talking to Mike as he's leaving. Why did we do this? We left all that money on the table. What were we thinking? We could have been rich, and that would have been awesome. And Mike says, well, I remember you said something about doing the right thing. I'm just in it for the job. I'm not here to make a bunch of money, which is classic Mike stuff. But then we see that they've intercut. There's this other scene that we didn't see earlier. And it's this interesting sort of expansion on Saul's thought process, because we do see him go into the courthouse. We actually see him go to the meeting that he's supposed to have with this other law firm that Hamlin, and McGill set up for him. And he talks to them and he says, hey, what's going on, guys? But Kim is there. And of course, we all know how Jimmy feels about Kim. And we don't quite know how she feels about him, which is it's interesting that we're a whole 10, now 11 episodes into the season. And her attitude towards Jimmy McGill becoming Saul Goodman is still a little bit ambivalent. We can tell that she likes him. We can tell that she even has some attraction to him, but that she's still wary, and that she still doesn't she doesn't trust how she feels about him. She doesn't fully trust him. And so he pulls her aside and says, if I take this job, because she's the one who set this deal up for him, he says, if I take this job, does that mean going forward that there's a chance for us to be together? In not quite so many words. And she says a really vague and interesting comeback, which again leads into we don't really understand exactly how she feels about him. She says, well, one thing doesn't have anything to do with the other, which in my initial reading of the scene, I took that as her meaning like basically no, that even if you go to this law firm and even if you do the quote unquote right thing, that doesn't mean that I'm going to date you, and kind of shooting him down. And as I watched the episode and as I've had some time to process it, I don't know that's what that means. I think that that's an interpretation, but the other interpretation is that literally one thing does not have to do with the other, and she would be cool with him whether he took the job or not. So you could read it both ways, and Kim is this really interesting character that doesn't... She defies that sort of... I understand how she feels about Jimmy. She's the wild card, which I think is why she's a really great balance to him, because you don't know how she's going to react exactly in every situation that Jimmy's in. You don't know if she's going to jump on board and be with him, or if she's going to try to talk some sense into him and be like, no, you're not going to do that. That's crazy. And so we kind of see that, right? Because we flash forward, we see Jimmy do the thing that we saw at the end of season 1. We see him go and dun, 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 dun. And where does he go? He goes to this really nice resort hotel, gives them a fake name, lounges around in the pool, calls Kim up, and he's like, I'm having the time of my life. And she comes in and she sees him, and he's like saying, hey, come on in the water. It's fine. Go buy a bathing suit. It'll be great. And she's not having it. She says, you're crazy. He even, in the scene before that, he goes back to the tanning salon. He burns, or not tanning salon, the nail salon, whatever place that is, hair cutting place, something with the Chinese lady, burns all of those bridges. She tells him no drink cucumber water for customers, and he just like totally turns the spigot on and drinking all the cucumber water right out of the faucet, which was great. Goes and tears the sign that says, Saul or Jimmy McGill Esquire, a law company, right off the crappy office that he has back there, and totally burns down that bridge and says, I'm not living like this anymore. That's the sense that you get, that he is willing to do whatever he has to better himself now. And now he's got Kim by his side, and he's saying, hey, come jump in this crazy whatever happens water. And she's like, no. What's your plan? What's your plan, dude? And he says, I don't know. Something cool is going to happen, and I want to be there for it, and it isn't going to be some stupid law thing. And she tries to talk him into being a lawyer again, and he brings up the sunk cost fallacy. She says, hey, you've studied this whole time. You worked so hard to be a lawyer. Are you going to throw all that away? And he says, well, that's not legit, right? Like, a gambler looks at all the money he's lost and says, well, I have to put more down now because, I spent all this money. I must be on the verge of something great. And he has a point. He really does have a point. He's approaching it basically the correct way. And especially as we saw last season, again, he gets beat down every time he tries to do the right thing. So why should he? And you think she's gonna not be convinced. You think, well, maybe Kim, being the sensible one, is just gonna walk off and say, okay, whatever. But then they overhear this loudmouth traitor talking about he's just talking silly trader BS stuff. He's yelling about shorting stuff and how crappy the stock is and everything. And they overhear this conversation, and Jimmy says to Kim, come over here. And she's like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, come over here and just follow my lead and hang with me. It'll be cool. And he goes over there and proceeds to scam this guy. Not legit, like, scam him out of a bunch of money, but he spins up this yarn about how that they have all this money from an inheritance. And he makes it sound so legit, too. He says, like, you can there's no limit to how much you can invest, right? That's the question he opens with. And, of course, the guy's like, no, what are you, an idiot? And, of course, the rule of conning is someone is making them think that you're the idiot instead of the other way around. And they talk to him, and they get him to buy these really expensive drinks as he's trying to convince them to go in with his investment firm with money that they do not actually have. And this, all of these $50 tequila shots that they finish the entire bottle and get brought the tequila stopper from the bartender. And they're like, well, good job. Well, we'll definitely be in touch, man. You've convinced us. And they run off right before he gets the bill. And that's where my perspective shift on Kim happened, because I thought, you keep, in one instance, you're expecting her to be the stick in the mud, the person who's telling him to be sensible and to come back, and how dare you. And yet then you see her not do that. She clearly has no problem with jumping on board his crazy schemes, with even bouncing off of him and conning this Mark. And yet she still is kind of the grounding influence in a sense, because after they con this guy, she goes back to his hotel room. We can assume everything that happens there. They wake up in the morning. They have a great conversation about teeth brushing, where he asks to brush his teeth with her toothbrush. He's like, I ain't doing that. And she says, after everything we did last night, you're not. That's how is this a problem? And they have a great little comedic exchange, which brings it back to the sort of dark comedy that Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad have always been. But then she says, and hey, I'm going to go back to work. I have to go back to my real life, the thing that I actually do. And you get that sense that, yeah, she's willing to go on the fun little jaunts with him, the crazy adventures, but she's always going to go back to what makes sense and the thing that is grounding her. And he's not there yet. He tells her, oh, I've definitely got a place to go, leaves the room. And then we see him in the next scene back in the pool, clearly not having any other place to go. So I think that's a really interesting dynamic for him and Kim. And then the other scene that we get, which is a lot of fun and not really kind of the B plot at this moment, although I assume it'll connect in later on with Saul/Jimmy, is Mike going to work for this guy that he worked for in season 1, where this sort of nerdy IT guy who somehow managed to get his hands on this really high-end pharmaceutical drug type stuff is working with Nacho, the character who also knows Tuco from the main storyline from Breaking Bad. And Nacho is trying to start up his own arm of a drug selling operation. Probably not going to go that well in the end, because we He isn't in Breaking Bad, so I'm going to guess he does not get a happy ending ultimately, but who knows how long that'll take to happen. But this nerdy dweeb guy shows up to meet Mike, who is his enforcer, kind of bodyguard type, with this giant Hummer, like flames spray painted down the sides, spinning rims, and Mike just looks at that and he's like, yeah, we're not going in that. And not in a douchey way, because Mike is very polite and very, you know, he never puts people down much. You can tell that he's trying to get through to this kid and trying to, I mean, the guy's relatively old, but kind of an idiot. He's trying to teach him something. He is actually trying to convince him, listen, you got a good thing going, but you're going to get yourself in trouble showing off all this bling in front of these people. They know that you're drawing attention to themselves, and they're not going to like that because then you're drawing attention to them. Let's go in my car. And the IT guy says, listen, they're not even, all you ever do is stand behind me anyway. First of all, why do I need your advice? What do you know? Just never ask Mike, what do you know? Because he knows. Okay, he does. But secondly, he says, and now I'm paying you the salary of 3 men, which we saw in the previous season as well, where Mike showed the guy that he was up to and better than all of the other bodyguards he had hired. And so he fires Mike, basically. There's this long, sort of conversation, but he says, I don't need you. If you're not going to ride in my bling machine, if you're going to try to tell me what to do, I don't need you standing behind me. Nacho's not coming with any bodyguards. Why do you think I need one? And Mike again says, listen, kid, trust me, you need me. And of course, the idiot's like, well, of course you'd say that. You're getting all the money off of it. I've cut my costs and you can go off. So he goes off and he meets Nacho. And Nacho's this really interesting character because he's not like Tuco where he's over the top, coked out crazy. He's this very quiet kind of guy. And that's a little bit more scary even because you can tell that he'll kill you. But he's not gonna like scream about it and make it a big fuss. He'll just do it. He won't even blink. He'll stab you in the back the second he thinks it's to his interest to do that. And so Nacho's there. He gets the drugs. The guy gets the money from him, counts it, which is a great callback to the previous season where Mike did make him count it. So at least he's learned something from Mike, I guess. But while he's counting it, he's like, oh yeah, check out my sweet ride, jump in and look at it. And Nacho kind of gets in and he's like, okay. And he pops the glove compartment while Dweeby McDweeberson is in the back and looks at the driver's, the registration, which I believe had his address on it. And a little later, we see that Dweeby McDweeberson's house has been burglarized. And he calls the cops, which is an interesting... I don't know that I would have called the cops if I had a house where I was hiding drugs. But he calls the cops. He brings them in and says... He starts talking about this baseball card collection. And I don't know about y'all, but I was thinking... Okay, so clearly the baseball cards are the drugs. And he's just trying to not say he had all his drugs stolen, but he wants the cops to go hunt for these people... Right? And that was where my mind went anyway. But then as he keeps talking and giving all these specifics about these baseball cards and going on and on about the baseball cards, you think, wait a minute. No. He actually has a giant baseball card collection that he's deadly worried about. He doesn't, I'm sure he cares about the drugs, but he called the cops to a house where he was keeping stolen drugs because he is that worried about his baseball card collection. And he's an idiot, obviously. But... he goes off into the other room to get them an itemized list of everything that was stolen. And while he's gone, the cops kind of give each other the eye. And they've been acting weird this whole time. And I think it's this great sort of, we know that we know something, and we know that you should know that we know something, but we obviously can't come out and say it. But man, that's a sweet ride that you have out there. And man, you work for a pharmaceutical company, huh? Yeah. So they've already got their spider sense is tingling a little bit clearly from how they act. And again, idiot IT guy just does not pick up on any of that. He does not. He's just focused in on those baseball cards, man. I got to get them baseball cards back. So they say, okay, well, go get your itemized list, print it out for him, bring it back. And while he's gone, they notice that there is, there's been a bunch of carnage in the living room, but there's this weird corner-shaped indentation in the carnage that's right in front of the couch where there's nothing there. And they see that and they're saying, there's somebody's pulled out this couch recently. So they pull the couch out, and behind the couch they find this loose floorboard, not a floorboard, but like a running board that goes up against the wall on the bottom. And they pop that out, and there's a hollowed out space underneath there with nothing in it. And I'm still not sure what the implication there is. Part of me thinks that the drugs got stolen by Nacho, which would be my first inclination. You would think, okay, that's what I would do. But then maybe he also got rid of them. Maybe he moved the drugs somewhere else. Maybe he didn't think to look for them. As dumb as that sounds, and I can't believe that. Well, no, yes, because he moved the couch, so he had to look for them. But maybe he moved them after the raid, and that's, he saw that somebody come in, so he figured, I'll move these and put them somewhere else. But we don't know. The point is, I don't know where the drugs are, and it's an interesting thought. The thought that springs to mind right this second is that it's possible that it's not Nacho, because the safe thing, because the baseball cards are in this safe, and that almost seems like more of a Mike move, because this guy blows Mike off, and Mike knows that he's getting himself into hot water. Not Mike is getting, but the character of the pharmaceutical dude, he knows he's going to get himself in trouble. I think there's at least a possibility that Mike went over there to A, put the fear of God in the guy, and B, get his job back, and C, maybe get some cool baseball cards. Because that's the only reason I can think of that the safe would get cracked for the baseball cards, unless Nacho has some skills that we don't know about. But then, we go back to Jimmy, and Jimmy, after thinking about it for a while and looking at his prospects and realizing that Kim is not going to go on the crazy, let's see what happens journey with him forever. That she'll go on a little jaunt with him, but she's not going to commit to that. He makes a decision to go to the other law firm that she set him up with. And I think that really sets the tone for what we're going to have going forward in the series, because Jimmy and Kim, Kim is really the stakes here. She is what is at stake for Jimmy. She is the core that is keeping him back. Before it was, I'm going to do the right thing. I want to please Chuck. And that's gone now, but he still does have the anchor. The thing that's keeping him from becoming Saul Goodman right now is the hope that Kim will accept him for who he is, or for who he's pretending to be, going to this law firm. And it's still in flux. Who Jimmy McGill and who Saul Goodman is still this really fluid thing that I think the show and the character is kind of figuring out as it goes, because he goes into the other law firm, and there's a part of me that thinks, you guys are going to get screwed over so bad. I know that there's going to be a lot of drama happen to Jimmy, and I know that because you can't have it be a TV show without bad stuff happening to the main character, right? That's sort of the driving conflict of how things work. But I also think he will totally just mess them up, and he's totally capable of doing that. I don't know that that's how it's gonna happen, but I feel bad for those people taking this lion that looks like a lamb into their den, because he has turned his back on doing the right thing. He is willing to do what it takes to get what he wants. What he wants right now is Kim, and so he'll stay on the straight and narrow as long as he thinks that's an option. But man, the second that gets taken off the table, just like with his brother's approval, the second that he realized that his brother was not anywhere close to, gonna ever get behind him from what he was trying to do, and that he was never gonna win that approval. We saw him cut that tie, and we saw him cut that pull to do right, and now he's just got Kim. He's willing to play the game a little longer, but he's really playing the game. And we see this great contrast because at the beginning of the episode, we see the Jimmy McGill in the future, or whatever his name is, not the Saul Goodman of the future, not willing to go through that door, not willing to disobey the sign in his brand new office, which is so swank, by the way. Clearly, this is a plush job because the guy's talking to him about, what kind of company car does he want? And, there's this great art on the wall. Would you like to change it? And we've got this great store of art to put on the walls. This is a nice law firm. But there's this switch on the wall that says, do not turn this switch off under any circumstances. And there's a little tape underneath of it so that, you can't accidentally turn it off. And while the kid's gone, he just walks over to that switch and pulls the tape over and turns it off and sits there and listens for what's going to happen. And nothing happens that we see in this episode, although I'm looking forward to finding out whatever that was. But it's this really symbolic gesture that he's willing to play the game, but he's off the rails. He is doing his own thing, and he's not playing by the rules anymore. And so it's exciting. It's exciting to see where he's going to go now because he's got more freedom. He's got less scruples now. Still willing to put up the act for Kim, but we know where this character goes. We know he does not. Well, I say we know. We never saw him with Kim in Better Call Saul. It's entirely possible that in any of those off times where he wasn't on screen, he was calling her, he was talking to her, they maintained that friendship. But I think it's very likely that friendship is going to fall apart and let him go even further towards the Saul Goodman that we know and maybe love. But it's sad to see this Jimmy McGill character die because you're seeing him get beat down by the world and become someone else. And that's the draw of the show, but it's also the tragedy. That, and in the same sense of Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad, so, almost in more of a sense because Walter White always had that hubris and he always had that pride. And I think ultimately that was the single flaw that kept bringing him down more towards the ultimate bad guy that he became, with still a soul. I don't think Walter White was ever completely soulless, and you could still empathize with him, but he became somebody ruthless and somebody without, any kind of limitations. And Jimmy McGill seems to be on that path, but towards a different thing. Jimmy McGill was never ruthless, but he's also he's more innocent when he starts out than Walter White is. In a weird sense, I think even though he has more propensity for crime than Walter White was. Walter White was always sort of lily-livered, kind of cowardly in a way. Jimmy McGill isn't like that, but he's fun-loving right now. He's just trying to have fun. He's just trying to serve himself. And I think as we go forward, we're going to see him become a lot more cynical. And in a sense, this fun-loving kind of free spirit going to the cynic, going to the hardened shell that we see Saul Goodman is maybe, it's at least as big a tragedy as Breaking Bad's, Walter White going bad. But it's a different flavor, and it's really great that this show knows what works and knows what its audiences is, because you have these great, obviously the cinematography and everything that they put together, these are beautifully shot, beautifully written, but it still is about this character and about the long view of the change that he goes through and who he becomes and how he becomes that. And that was what was strong about Breaking Bad, and that's what's strong about Better Call Saul. So yeah, that's my recap. That's what I thought of this episode. Really liked it. Didn't have anything that I could really nitpick and say, this was not very good. It's starting off strong again, guys. Vince Gilligan, I'm sure he can do wrong, but this is not him doing any wrong by me. Strong stuff in the same vein that we love from the first season, from Breaking Bad. This continues on that, and I just can't wait to see where this season goes. So we'll see you guys next week with another recap of Better Call Saul. I'm Albert Berg. Check out our other videos. Hit like and subscribe if you like this and you want to see more. And we will see you next week with another recap of Better Call Saul. Commit!
All right. He will also start. Whoa! What was that?
A section of the cavern has collapsed.
Whoops!